afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having us. You'll see on screen my name is Shagnik Lahiri. You can all call me Shaggy. My friends do. My colleagues do. Sometimes my mum does. This is my colleague, Darren. And this afternoon we're here to talk a little bit about Gen Z, obviously. We're here from Ipsos. At Ipsos we study people, what drives them, how they behave, what they think, what they perceive, but also like our Ipsos Iris data shows, what that actually means, interpreting what they say they do versus what they actually do. And we're going to get into that this afternoon. But before we dive into all of that, I want to get a read on all of us in the room. So I might ask people just to raise their hands as I go through. But how many of us in this room are in the millennial generation? Okay. How many of us are Gen X? Do we have any baby boomers in the room? And what about Gen Z? All right, that includes myself as well. Awesome, okay. And just a second question then. Raise your hands if you feel like you have a strong understanding of Gen Z consumers. Not just the headlines, but actually a strong and grounded understanding of what they think and what they do. Okay, awesome, cool. All right, so that's what we often see. So there's a lot of noise, but not always a lot of understanding. But I appreciate, Abi, that you probably have some answers, so that's awesome. Great, well, that's where we're gonna begin, and that's with the headlines. So, there's a lot of news coverage on Gen Z. They're health conscious, but they're, chronic vapors. They spend a lot of time, not doing their jobs, but they're highly ambitious. They care a lot about the social value of things, but at the same time, they're, all over fast fashion. So there's a lot of paradox there and not a lot of clear answers for people. And where does that leave us? It leaves us with what we're here to present. But before I get too much into numbers and data, I wanted to introduce some other members of our team here with us this afternoon. This is Jen.
Those of us in Gen Z, we've grown up online. We're connected all the time, and sometimes it's just overwhelming. That's why we're looking to talk more openly about mental health and take it seriously. Our social feeds aren't just background noise for us. They shape how we discover, how we decide, and even how we show up in the world. And when it comes to influence, we trust the people we follow more than polished ads. If someone we relate to recommends a product, that matters way more. And honestly, sometimes the people we follow, they guide us more than any ad ever could. It's about trust and about seeing ourselves in someone else. We're the first truly digital generation. And if you want to connect with us, you have to meet us where we live, online, authentically, and with purpose.
All right, thanks, Jen. And I also want to introduce another member, Ben, to kind of clarify his take on that.
But not all of us in Gen Z are the same. I'm always looking for the little things that show who I am. The sneakers I wear, the tech I carry, even the brands I back. I want what I own to say something about me. But it's not random. I scroll, I check, I see what people are saying online before I decide. When a brand feels like it fits my vibe, I'll go for it. Even if it costs a bit more, it's worth it. Because how I show up online matters just as much as how I show up in real life.
What do you think, Jen?
We're not all the same. I'm not all that interested in the status of things. I want to know it's from a brand I can stand behind. I care about what companies put into the world, not just their products, but what they believe in. Do they back causes? Do they respect the planet? That matters to me. When I support a brand, it's because I trust it to reflect my values, not just fill my cart.
Okay, so aside from the slightly uncanny valley element of all that, those aren't actors. They're also not caricatures. They're AI personas built straight from the data that we have in Ipsos from our global trends and our global advisor data. They give voice to what the numbers are saying. So let's look a little bit behind some of those numbers. So Gen Z are unique citizens and consumers. The data across our Ipsos Global Trends, Global Advisor, and audience measurement shows this clearly. Gen Z has set itself apart, not just as consumers, but they reshape the expectations of brands and institutions. So, some fun data viz for all of us. On the outside of this pie chart, you'll see our Gen Z data compared to what the Gen Pops say to some of these statements. So, this is our first digitally born generation, Gen Z. They're 14 percentage points more likely than the general population to buy products or experiences that look good in photos that they post online. They're 11 percentage points more likely than the general population to make purchases based on influencers they follow on social media. So what does that leave us with? For Gen Z, the feed is not just background noise. It's the storefront, it's their peer group, it's their recommendation engine. Sometimes it's the notes from which they make a speech presentation. So you really need to keep that in consideration. But that always-on reality comes at a cost. So 3 in 4 Gen Z Australians feel overwhelmed by having too many choices. That is 19 percentage points higher than the general population. And almost 9 in 10 say that they're more likely than the general population to think they need to do more to look after their mental well-being. 7 in 10 say they're more likely than the general population to wish they could slow down the pace of their life. And this is reflected in our audience measurement data as well. In the last month, 1 in 5 Gen Zs have visited a mental health website or app. That includes Verywell Mind, Lifeline, Headspace, organizations like this. But Gen Z is not a homogenous cohort, as Jen and Ben expressed earlier. Not one mindset. There are sharp differences between the cohorts, and we need to be mindful of that as well. So when we look at Gen Z males, success is more often about image and about ownership. They're 24% more likely to say than their Gen Z female counterparts that they're willing to pay extra for brands with appealing images, and 24% more likely to measure their success by what they own. And according to the Ipsos Iris audience measurement data, their online behavior reflects this as well. They're 3 times more likely to visit brands like Calvin Klein, 4 times more likely to visit brands like BMW, and 8 times more likely to visit retailers for luxury apparel resale sites like Goat Sneaker Emporium. If you don't know what that is, you might not be in Gen Z. And for our Gen Z females, it tends to be about trust and the values that guide their brand choices. They're 19 percentage points more likely to back products from brands that they know and trust, and 11 percentage points more likely to expect something from their companies in terms of social value. It's not just about profits for them. And in a digital world, that comes through in the choices they make as well. While there's a lot of talk about the rise of fast fashion, Gen Z women are more than twice as likely to visit sites like Depop. But what does all of this mean? Gen Z isn't just another youth segment. They already make more than 1 in 5 Australians. They influence culture, commerce, and politics, and have been faster than any generation before them. If we misread them, we misread the future market. We've seen they're the first digital-born generation, but they're overwhelmed. They can be status-driven or values-driven, and their choices online are already setting the tone for what's next for them. So it becomes, how do we talk to Gen Z and where? What do you think, Darren?
Very, very good question, Shaggy. I'm glad you asked. So maybe I'll take the where do we talk to them first, because that's maybe the easier thing to talk about. And a few people this morning have talked about Ipsos Iris. And this is where we move from the attitudinal data that Shaggy's spoken about through to the behavioural data that Ipsos Iris opens up to us. The data we've got here is based on affinity indices. So it's basically based on the number of hours people spend online indexed against the total population. And that's the great benefit of Iris, of course. It's a nationally representative read. And so there are some elements here that you might say, Darren, that's really, really obvious. So if you come up to the top left quadrant, platforms that skew younger and more male, Twitch, fandom. Platforms that skew younger and female, Pinterest, TikTok. But what Ipsos Iris does, of course, is it gives us that ability to drill down, to filter down, and to understand with quite a lot of granularity what individual groups are doing, what individual cohorts are doing. So you look at YouTube in the middle. Somebody asked about that a little bit earlier. Look at YouTube there. It looks to be kind of the average platform, but that's total YouTube. When you drill down into GenZ, what you start to see is, a larger difference. So Gen Z males, according to Iris in June, were spending 38 hours a month on YouTube. Compare that to just 24.5 hours for Gen Z women. In contrast, Gen Z women spending 44.5 hours a month on TikTok. So if you think about that, 1.5 hours every single day. I see some nods in the audience. People obviously recognizing their teenage kids. Beyond that, on YouTube, Gen Z women spending another hour. So, really, really very digitally connected. So Ipsos Iris, big clues about where to find our audiences. We are publishing a Gen Z specific report later in this week, which cuts across categories. You'll find that on both the Ipsos and the IAB websites. Thank you for listening to this important message. So that's the where, but what about the how? And what I'll do here is I'll give you a very, very quick masterclass on what we call the misfits mindset at Ipsos. And essentially, this is an empirically based framework that highlights what are the key components of the most creatively effective campaigns. And essentially, it says the most successful campaigns deliver a creative experience that delivers some kind of value to the audience. And to drill down into that a little bit more, there are 3 key areas represented by our brain here that it's pretty important for most creative to hit to be successful. The first one is about that creative experience, I already mentioned. It's about how you get attention, which is the gateway to memory encoding, so that your advertising can do something at a later point. And you do this by being unique or different, original, entertaining, illogical, something that will pique people's interest when they're viewing you online. The second element that is important, and it's where a lot of campaigns fall down, is delivering some kind of empathy or fitting in. This is essentially about having relevance to the audience that you're speaking to. And that, of course, is where a lot of what Shaggy talked about, those attitudes and understanding what people are thinking, is oh so very important. And there are different types of empathy. It can be empathy of what I know about the brand. It can be the relevance to my life. And then the third element, we call it creative ideas, but it's really ideas about the brand that the creative delivers. And again, it's an element that is sometimes missed, but it's really about, am I doing something that either reinforces or disrupts people's existing associations around a brand? And brand's the important word here, because we heard again from Shaggy the importance of brands in the life of Gen Z. And so we really, really shouldn't be afraid of brand building when we talk to them. We need to do more than just delivering those really compelling creative experiences. I've only been at Ipsos a few months. One of the questions I've had most often is which of these 3 areas are most important? And there's a classic market research answer here. It depends. It depends on a number of things, but one of the key thing I'll say it depends on for this session this morning is which platform we're on. So if we're talking linear video, talking YouTube, I'm a Gen Xer, I'm on linear video, then the creative experiences are the most important. Don't worry too much about the numbers here. Basically, the bigger the number, the more of a driver it is in getting an outcome. And in this case, it's that memory encoding that's the gateway to getting into people's heads. So linear video creative experiences are more important. But what about when we get onto our devices? That's when the balance starts to change. Social video in feed. So if we're on Instagram, the creative experience is a lot less important. Think about the Gen Zer, scrolling through their feed. What's more important there is that empathy and fitting in. Is the content that I'm seeing relevant to me in some way? Does it fit with what I expect from the brand? Does it fit with the sort of thing that I'm looking for when I'm flicking through my Instagram feed? When we come to short form videos, so more like Instagram Reels, TikTok, there's a shift again, but still you see that importance of empathy. But given the slightly faster flicking between, is this video of interest to me? Is this reel of interest to me? Then the creative experience comes in again. So you have to get that all-important balance between being empathetic, being relevant, and having some kind of creative hook. The final point to make on this slide is that even though creative ideas aren't as important as empathy and fitting in and creative experiences on device, it's more important than in linear video. So again, it comes back to that important point. Don't be afraid of talking about what your brand can deliver to people when you're on platform with a GenZ. Now, we can drill down further into the data. At Ipsos, we have a tool which we call Creative Spark AI. It's an AI-driven, AI-based ad evaluation tool. And as well as having an analytic AI component, it has a generative AI component. So we don't only use computer vision to look at the ad, but we use Gen AI to look at the components, the tactics, the elements that are being used within that creative. And that helps us to understand what are the most successful creative tactics that can drive your outcomes. Again, here we're still talking about memory encoding, so getting attention and getting into people's brains. There's a common conventional wisdom, I guess, that if you want to get people's attention, then you brand early and you brand often. And the data that we get from Spark AI shows us that, yeah, that's actually the case. If you've got brand in there for a longer period of time, you'll get, on average, 7% better memory encoding than ads that don't. But if you show something that is unique creatively, you'll get a 17% better outcome in terms of that memory encoding. So 1.4 times better performance from being unique than just ramming your brand in. At Ipsos, we have a Creative Hall of Fame. They're the best ads that we've ever tested anywhere in the world. I'm going to show you an ad from Japan. This is a Hall of Famer, and it features a character called DJ Pico Taro, and you'll see why this is a top performer.
I have a Kit Kat. I have a Zenleaf. Yokubari double. I have a Kit Kat. I have a Zenleaf. Yokubari double. Yokubari double. Yokubari double. Yokubari double. Yokubari double 新登場
I just don't know what to say. I've seen that ad so many times since I joined Ipsos, but I still don't know what to say. I did find myself humming Yokubari Double this morning, which is quite a concern. Like I say, highly effective, not only in terms of memory encoding, which I was talking about on this slide, but also in terms of driving behaviours. Oh no! I thought we'd corrected that fault in the presentation. There we go. All right, still with the element of using LLMs to understand different creative tactics that can be used across platforms, and drilling down now a little bit further into a specific platform that is TikTok. We looked at a number of ads that we've tested. We pulled out the most effective and the least effective and said, right, in the most effective, what tactics did we find were more closely linked to driving memory encoding and to driving behaviors? So top right, they're the things that help. Bottom left, they're the things that don't help. So bottom left, things that aren't resonating with Gen Zers, basically fast cuts, discounts, comparisons, not so successful. But top right, things like recipes, unboxings, how-tos, and demos, they are things that we've got a demonstrated linkage between people saying things and people actually remembering and taking action. And if you think about those particular tactics, recipes, unboxing, demos, how do you deliver those? Well, here's something that maybe isn't new, isn't different. Quite a lot of people in the world this year are talking about creators. Unilever's going to spend half of its marketing budget on creators and have a creator in every postcode in India and Brazil. The fact is creators are effective. So if we look at our database, what we see is the average ad that has a creator in it is about 1/7 more effective in terms of driving memory encoding, and it's about 1/5 better in terms of driving a behavior change. So creators can be very good. As with celebrities, if I talked 20 years ago about having a celebrity in your TV ad, it is what you do with them though. So you've got to use them effectively. When McDonald's launched its chicken wings here a few months back, we put all kinds of ads that they'd created into Creative Spark AI. And I was a little surprised to find that one of the most effective, both in terms of driving short-term behaviors and affecting equity, was a creator-produced ad. And this is it.
This just in, McDonald's have released new Chicken McWings. I repeat, new Chicken McWings. Run, don't walk.
I got the goods. I ordered a 5-pack with 2 sauces, but you can order a 3-pack with 1 sauce as a snack, or you can make it a meal if you want it for lunch or dinner. And they come with these 2 sauces, spicy buffalo or ranch. Let's open it up. Excuse me? Oh my god. I'm gonna go in with the ranch first. Cheers. That has beat all of my expectations. It is so crispy and tender, and ranch is my all-time favorite sauce, so this did not disappoint. Next up, spicy buffalo. Yum. It definitely has a kick to it, but it's so delicious. I can't get over how crispy and juicy these wings are. Highly recommend going and trying the new Chicken McWings.
Not a recipe for how you do creator, but a really, really good example. The final point I want to leave with you is really about the empathy. I showed you the importance of empathy, and a lot of brands, like I say, can't get it right. Shaggy talks about the tensions, the concerns that a lot of Gen Zs have, or Gen Zs have. We had a tension about, which we said actually, tensions about in their lives. And brands can actually take those tensions and create a hook for empathy out of them. So what I would say is I'm not advocating here for dramatizing the concerns that people have in their lives, because that's no help to them at all. But if you can find a way that your brand can offer a solution to them, that can be a very, very powerful way of driving that relevance that is a driver to memory encoding and to behavior change once you're online. Now, a brand that's done that recently is Corona. As a Gen Xer, I remember Corona as the beer brand that's associated with desert islands. They've repositioned and they are more environmentally conscious now, as are Gen Zs. And so what they're doing is they're demonstrating that the brand has values for the planet as well as for individuals. It's won awards at Cannes, it's won Effies, and it's contributed to a 15% uplift in the brand's sales. Just to give you a little bit of thirst for lunch. But before we do that, 6 things we've brought you in the last 20 minutes. Shaggy.
Yeah, so I suppose the key takeaways that we want to leave everyone with, other than to go home and buy Kit Kat, McDonald's, and Corona, is that Gen Z is not just younger, they're fundamentally different, and you need to be aware of those differences when communicating to them. We've given you kind of a really high-level view of what that looks like. There's so many more ways that you can cut and look at the data and look at Gen Z as a cohort and those differences. But one thing we know for sure is Gen Z is not one story. There's differences within the cohort. They're not just gendered. They're really expansive, and you need to be asking the right questions, the questions for your brands, in order to understand and unpack the best value for you there.
And then creatively, Ipsos Iris really is your friend in terms of finding where to speak to Gen Zs. Once you've found them, do build brands. Don't be afraid to reinforce or disrupt existing perceptions about your brand. Potentially use the tensions that Gen Zs have in their lives as a springboard into an empathetic connection, and think about the tactics that we know can drive creative effectiveness for Gen Zers. that's everything we have for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, now the key question is Shaggy coming back to present next year in the Kit Kat outfit?
Undecided.
Undecided. Okay, it's not on air. It's just my question. There's none in the app. Do we have any sensible question from the audience? All right, bit of exercise for JJ.
It's not a super groundbreaking question, but just on the Meet GenZs where they are scale chart you had, there were 2 logos that I didn't know, and I was just wondering if you could clarify what they were. The one with the butterfly.
Blue sky?
I don't know that one. And the one with the flame, just above Instagram.
I think that was Fandom.
Yeah, that would have been Fandom.
That's like a gaming
entertainment,
thing, like Discord. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Let's say, look for our report. There'll be a lot more data.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Any more for any more before we hit lunch? No. Thank you, gents.